Okay, welcome to episode 2 of my AM tutorials. This time I'm talking about setting up users and groups. Okay, these are the topics for today. I'm talking about users and groups in TouchUI, in Useradmin, and in the CRX Explorer. We're going into detail about how to access the web console or the OCI console for non-admin users. I'm talking about the special service users, and then we look into how the user node looks like, how to install users by a package or by code, and I go briefly into permissions and show you the authentication support types. Well, basically it's just the list. So let's begin with users and groups in TouchUI. Okay, open up a browser of any kind, go to localhost, and you see here the TouchUI with AM start. This is where you default to, and from here you can go to Tools, Security, Users and Groups. We start with users, and in here you can see the name, the login name, the status, and the job title of all the users. You can see two different types of users. Those here are the service or system users, which we come to later in another chapter. And we got normal users. We have a list view and a card view. In the card view, you can see other details or larger images. Yeah. Let's go back to the list view, and we can also hide the service users. So we only have our users. Okay, clicking on one or selecting one shows you a menu where you can enable, disable, or delete the user. Or if you click on the user, you can edit the user. Let's create one. The mandatory fields are ID and password. The rest is optional. You can set the account status on the creation, like active or inactive. You can upload a photo or add the user to specific groups. Normally or default, the user is a part of everyone group. Everyone has a minimum amount of permissions, but you could also add the user to the group administrators, for example. You could also set more than one, like administrator and authors. Let's start with a normal user without anything. So we created a test user. Test user is now here. It is enabled. If we click on it again, we can also see that it is in everyone group. We could change the password, manage trust store and key store. And yeah, we could also use this one now and log in. And we won't get far because the user has no rights, not even to look at the TouchUI. We could change this by declaring him as a member of a different group. Okay, group creation is a bit different. It has less information. So if we go back to groups, you can see all the groups here, name, description, the number of members in it, and if they are published or not or modified. So creating a group, there's a minimum of the ID and optional name and description, and you could also add members to groups. We could use the test user now in our group, or we could also use different groups, like we could add authors to this group if we say test group, for example, but we don't do it now. Okay, and that's it for TouchUI. Okay, the second topic is creation of users and groups in Useradmin, which is a more powerful way of creation. So we go back to our instance again. This time we add Useradmin. And what you see here is the classic UI Useradmin. Classic UI is the UI which was replaced by TouchUI with the introduction of AEM6. So you can see the users here, the groups, and you can say hide users or hide groups. And you can create user. You can see why it is a bit more powerful. You can also specify the path, which normally is a random node name. And with the path, you can set at least the first character of your node name, which you can find later on. So if we go to our test user now, you can see properties, groups, permissions, impersonators, preferences. If it would be a group, it has this tab members, but it's the user. So you can see the groups it is in, and you can see what is quite powerful, the permissions, and also set the permissions of the user, which we come to later in another chapter. And you got some preferences here. And that's it. Users in the content repository Extreme Explorer. Okay, for this, we go to CRX, not DE, but Explorer. And here we are in the Explorer. Basically, you need to watch out for this one here. You are not logged in right now. That means you can see everything, but you cannot create anything. So before going deeper, we go to the login screen, log in, and now we're logged in as an administrator. And yeah, we got a lot of control here, but we go to Useradmin. And as far as I know, this is the only place where you can create system users, where we will get to later. So basically we can create a user here. And then we have another user. And that's it. Instead of sharing the admin access to other developers or users, we can also allow web console access to other users than the admin. This is quite common to read log files, for example. Okay, so this time we go to the web console. And we are logged in as the administrator. So basically we go to configuration. And here we are looking for the security provider. And here, in here you can add usernames or group names, which then get access to the web console. Basically, it's better to use group names instead of usernames. So you give access to one specific group and add then later on users to the specific group, instead of multiple times going here and adding specific users. But for now, I will just use this. And then if we go there, we get access to the system console. Basically, if we take that out again, The user has no access any longer. And that's it. Service users are quite different from normal users. They got no passwords and are used for services only. Services get access to the AM system through a user mapping within the Web Console config manager. Here you can map bundles to service users, or to be more specific, map subservices to service users. Well, this is a security measure because in the past, developers tended to use administrative sessions for their services to have full access to the repository. By mapping a service to a user, it is bound to its repository access permissions. So how does an actual user node look like? So for this, we go to the CRX DE. And in here we have our home users, and then we have our test user. You can see in the node name, this is quite random. So it will be placed in the first letter folder. This is because of security reasons. There you have to ask Adobe. Yeah, this node itself has then some subnodes where you have the tokens, the login tokens. You got a profile where you have all the information about this user, like family name, first name, gender, stuff like this. And you got a rep policy node. This is an ACL. An ACL is an access control list. And this is, this grants or denies access to specific areas in the repository. And here you got for the test user all privileges within its own node. Yeah, and that's how the test user looks like. Why would you install a user by a package? Well, let's look at it like this. If you have written a lot of code with a lot of services which use service users, you want to apply those service users to not only the author instance, but also to the publisher instance or multiple publisher instances. So basically you can provide those users by a package. For this I have prepared an IntelliJ project. About this project I will get into it in a later video. But let's say we have our package home, and in here we have the home users folder structure where we create another one which represents the folder where our user is in. And what we do now is we pull that user from CRX. And we successfully imported the user. So basically here we got the user with the test user with all the elements in the CRX. What we do now is we delete this one here because we don't need it. And we need this node name. What we do now is we put in the filter of the package. This one is not the correct one. And then this user gets installed on the machine, on the AM machine. So if we trigger that now, this will be built and then deployed on the machine where it gets installed, becomes installed. And done. So if we go now to our machine on the CRX, the test user was here before. Let's say we go here and delete the user. I refresh this and it's gone. Let's say we deploy that now. And if we refresh this, here it is again, our test user. We can see it came in by this home package here, where we got the test user. And that's it. You could also create users by code. Let's have a look at this. So I created the structure again. We have a user service here, which has a create group function. And what I do now is, well, I use this create group function, use the resource resolver, adapt it to Usermanager, and I can use the Usermanager create group function to create the group in the end. The Usermanager itself is from the Jackrabbit API. So basically we can use this to create a user, or in this case a group. Basically what I did is I created a servlet where I will call this function and I use a parameter as the input for the name. So let's go there. Well, I'm here, create group name, and I can say banana. Normally you would implement anything visual feedback. So basically we go here to the groups. Now let's see where he put my group. It should be here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So it got created. This is another way to create groups or users. For this, we need a service user in the back. It's like with this line, we can map the user to the service. Okay. Next, I will go briefly into permissions. Okay, so one way to edit or set permissions is to go to Useradmin. You choose your user and go to Permissions tab, and here then can see read, modify, create, delete, read ACL, edit ACL, and replicate, access rights or permissions, and basically those ACL permissions are that the user can change or remove permissions for other users. If you set the permissions for a specific tree element, the subtree will then be included. Means if I save this and come back here, I get the read permission for every subnode too. I could also revoke this, and this will be applied again to all subnodes, except for those which are from different rule sets or from different permissions. Okay. Another way to set permissions is by CRX. Permissions are summarized in ACLs called rep policy nodes, and they can be placed in every folder within the tree. ACL is short for access control list, and here you got allow and deny permissions. Each node represents permission for a single user or group. So basically going here to this deny, it says version purge service has no read access within this folder, so the root folder. But then again, it is restricted to this path. So it is not for the complete root folder, but only applies on this path here. There are a lot of rules around ACLs and permissions, but the basics are like this. User permissions stand above group permissions. Say we have a test user which is part of a test group. If you allow access to the content node for the test group and deny access for the test user on the same node, the test user won't get access permission because the user permission stands above the group permission. Another rule is that user can't have an allow and deny node with the same privileges within an ACL. CRX DE will automatically handle the conflicts there. Furthermore, the group permissions are set based on node order. And the last topic in this video is about authentication support. I'll just name them. If you want to have a detailed explanation or detailed insight, you can go to the link found in the description below. AM supports out of the box basic token and forms authentication, while it also supports non-AM authentication, which is LDAP, SSO, SAML, OAuth, and OpenID. And that's it. Again, thanks for watching this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment.